I Have a Bad Feeling About This by Jeff Strand. Chapter 24. Monica's parents liked to say that she was born without the fear gene. She did have fears, but they were more about, what if I'm friendless, than what if I got shot by criminals? Though putting her life in this much jeopardy was extreme, even by her standards, it had to be done. Okay, there were 3 bad guys. Mr. Grand was busy talking to Henry. Chad was busy pointing a gun at Eric. Ethan had been busy getting rid of the dead body and hopefully would continue being busy with that. So unless there was another bad guy unaccounted for, and Monica thought that Henry had probably counted correctly because 3 was a pretty low number, all she really had to do was move quickly and hope that Ethan didn't come back inside. Oh yeah, and she also had to hope that the back window was unlocked. Henry said that he remembered opening it when they burned a microwavable burrito and it hadn't been locked then, so it most likely wasn't locked now. If it was, she'd have to dive through it, which Monica didn't think you could do without getting a concussion and about 7,000 cuts, if at all possible. She wanted to avoid a plan of action where she got shredded. She darted out of the woods, moving like the ninja she'd always known she could be. She reached the window, which had approximately 83,000 dead bugs on the sill, and gently but quickly slid it open. With either the skill of a mighty Olympian or a sneaky burglar, she climbed through the window and then leapt down off the kitchen counter onto the tile floor, landing almost silently. Nobody was in the kitchen to shoot her. This was a good start. Though she had no time to waste, she thought it would be a fine idea to take a few seconds to scavenge a weapon or two just in case she had an unexpected visitor. She pulled open the first drawer, a butcher knife. Perfect. You could mess somebody up with a butcher knife. She opened a cabinet. Plastic glasses. Less useful than the butcher knife, but there was also a frying pan, which was not typically stored next to glasses, but whatever. So she grabbed that. It had a thick layer of brownish fossilized-looking gook at the bottom. They actually ate things that had been cooked on this? Vile. She hurried out of the kitchen, making sure not to step on any of the food, that littered the floor. She shifted the frying pan to her left hand, the same one that held the knife, as she went over to the closet door. She turned the handle. Locked. If she had a paperclip and a few extra minutes, she thought, she could pick the lock. But she didn't have either of those, so she hurried across the room towards Max's office. Oh, geez, there was still blood on the floor. She stopped, momentarily dizzy. Monica had caused her brothers to have many bloody noses in her life, but actually seeing blood from a murdered human being made her queasy. Suck it up, girl, she thought. No, not the blood. Power through this. You don't have time to be sick to your stomach. She ignored the blood and rushed into Max's office. A key ring dangled from a hook next to the door. She grabbed the keys and left the office, thinking that this was going pretty well so far. She winced. What a stupid thing to think. It was the perfect cue for the door to open. The door opened. Her first instinct was to hide, but the only place to hide was under Max's desk. No matter how agile you were, there wasn't much damage you could do to an opponent while crammed underneath a tiny desk. If they made even the most half-hearted effort to search the place, they'd find her, and the best she'd be able to do is let out a girlish little giggle and hope to charm the killers, which was not a fantastic strategy. So she had to go on the offensive. She rushed out the door, resisting the urge to let out a primal yell, since primal yells tended to alert others in the general vicinity of your presence. Monica knew that the correct move would be a butcher knife to the throat, since the noise would be like instead of the loud clang of a frying pan to the skull. But deep inside, she knew she was not prepared to stab somebody in the neck. It just wasn't part of her personality profile. She dropped the knife and kept the pan. As Ethan's eyes widened at the sight of a 16-year-old girl charging him, probably not a sight he'd expected at this particular moment, she flipped the pan around and smacked him in the face with the sticky side. There was a definite clang, but it was a muted clang. Ethan dropped to his knees, the pan stuck to his face. He clutched at it and tried to pry it off, but the pan remained firmly stuck there. It burns, he wailed. Monica kicked the door shut and locked it. She should have locked it in the first place, but oh well. She'd know that for next time. Then she kicked the pan, which made Ethan thrash around a bit less. She couldn't see his gun. Maybe he didn't have one. Better to stick with her plan than to waste time searching for a gun that might not be there. She sprinted for the closet. There were 6 or 7 keys on the ring, none of which were helpfully labeled. This is the key to the closet that has the big black bag full of useful weapons. So she tried the first one, which didn't fit. Somebody began to pound on the main door. It shook on its hinges. Monica hoped it wouldn't bring down the entire building. Ethan stood up, still wailing about how it burned and still trying to tear the paint off his face. The second key didn't fit. A gunshot from, about 20 feet away. So Ethan was packing heat after all. Fortunately, he was still blind and was apparently just shooting in random directions. The third key fit. Monica opened the door just as a bullet put a hole through it. There it was, a big black bag. She picked it up. It was way heavier than she had expected. Hurried into the kitchen, trying to keep herself from toppling over from the weight of the bag. Ethan kept pulling the trigger, even though his gun was now just clicking. She glanced back at him. What if she made Ethan into her hostage? They could do a trade. No, hostages were more useful when somebody cared about them. Mr. Strand would probably just shrug and say, "He's yours," use his head as a flower pot. Ethan ripped the paint off his face. Monica had never had a wax job. Her understanding was that it was not a pleasant process. Ethan, who'd suddenly had the equivalent of a wax job on his mustache, goatee, and left eyebrow, seemed to agree with the assessment. He bellowed in pain. The pounding on the front door continued. Monica ran for the window. She tossed the bag on the counter, hoping she hadn't just given herself a hernia. As she leapt up there, Ethan let out a primal yell. She could hear his footsteps squeak behind her as she shoved the bag out of the open window. There was a clatter, a yelp, an even louder squeak, and a thud. Without having seen any of this, Monica thought he'd probably tripped on the butcher knife and then slipped on the blood and then fell on his butt. She jumped out of the window. She grabbed the black bag, hurting her shoulder in the process, and then raced into the woods. Ethan lay on the floor, not sure if he was looking at his left foot or if his right foot was twisted wrong. He tripped on a butcher knife that he hadn't expected to be there, slipped on the blood that he should have known to avoid, and fallen on his butt. He wasn't sure if the pain or the shame was worse. He was definitely looking at his right foot, so the pain was worse. The door burst open, the top hinge popping right off. "What happened?" Chad asked. "What do you think happened?" Ethan said, hoping that Chad would not draw the conclusion that he'd been defeated by a teenage girl. Chad ran over and looked in the closet. "Where is he?" "I don't know." "Is he still here?" "I don't know." "What happened to your facial hair?" "It was horrible." Chad looked into the kitchen, then back at Ethan. "He must have gone out the window. Who was it?" Ethan wondered if a lie would come back to haunt him. He suspected that it would, but decided it was worth the risk. "A great big kid. Giant kid. Maybe not even a kid." Chad cursed. "We need to forget about the kids and get out of here." Randy slammed Monica's pocket knife into the second tire of Mr. Strand's car. He, Henry, and Monica had been worried the men would just leave, taking Eric with them, but this would put a stop to that. "What's going on in there?" Mr. Strand called out at the sound of a clang. Ethan didn't answer. Mr. Strand, Chad, Henry, and Eric listened carefully, with Mr. Strand and Chad hoping there wouldn't be any more surprising noises, and Henry and Eric hoping there would be all kinds of them. When the gunshots started, Mr. Strand nodded to Chad. "Check it out." Chad ran off. Now, instead of each of them having a man point a gun at them, Henry and Eric were being shielded by Mr. Strand's gun. Henry didn't feel significantly safer. Randy had nearly had a heart attack when Ethan went into the building. However, he'd been on the other side of the car and Ethan didn't see him. Randy slammed the pocket knife into the last two tires, nearly having another heart attack when Chad came running around the corner. Had Chad not been so distracted by pounding on the door, he probably would have at least seen Randy's elbow, but he didn't. With all the tires flat, Randy scampered back into the woods. As the last gunshot rang out, Henry cried out, clutched at his chest, and fell to the ground.